Okay, we're rolling.
All right, this is an interview at the New Scotland Historical Society, the 26th of September, 2007, approximately 3 p.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Yes, and my given name is Sanford Berkman. Everybody calls me Sandy.
Okay.
I was born October the 6th, 1920 in Cohoes, New York.
Okay. What was your educational background before you went into service?
I completed high school in Dover, New Hampshire, and I did 1 semester at the University of New Hampshire in Durham.
Okay.
I went to Albany Business College for a year and completed that course.
Okay, good. Do you remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I was in Mechanicville, New York, working for my uncles in the store. It was a Sunday, I remember, and I think, probably just roaming around, not much to do on a Sunday. Because the stores weren't open in those days on Sunday.
Right. Do you remember your reaction when you heard about it?
Yeah, I was deeply impressed. I couldn't believe anything like that could happen to our country.
Did you know where Pearl Harbor was?
Oh, yes.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted in the Marines, and I enlisted earlier, 30 days earlier, but I actually went into the Corps February the 8th of 1942.
Okay. Why did you select the Marine Corps?
I probably can't give you an honest answer at this point.
Did someone tell us they like the uniform?
No, I just, I thought it was, a good place to be, and I thought I would try it.
Okay. Now, where did you go for your basic?
Parris Island.
All right. What was it like there?
Tough. It was nothing like I expected. I left Albany. I was sworn in at Albany by Major McKinless. I still remember his name. And I went to Parris Island. I had a brand new top coat on at that time. I'll never forget it. And I left it with my uncle. He drove me down. And I said, well, I'm not going to need this. I'm going south. Not knowing, I had never been south. I got to Parris Island. They put us on a truck to take us to the camp. My God, it was so cold, it was unbelievable. Well, it was so cold, the first morning I woke up, we had 2-man tents. In those days, there were no barracks and board sidewalks. And I woke up and we had a bucket of water in the tent, and the thing was frozen. That's how cold it was. And we had these little space heaters. That's all we had in each tent. These old-fashioned little space heaters.
Okay. How long were you in Parris Island?
About 8 weeks. They accelerated the course, and it was not easy, but it was a good indoctrination into the Marine Corps. They taught you that you were no longer, if you thought you were the boss, forget it, because you weren't. The drill instructor was, and you better respect him because he was tough. And I remember him too. His name was Franklin Kerber. He was from Minnesota. He was a regular China Marine.
Now, why do you remember him so well?
Well, the one thing, he had a tent of his own on the end of the walkway, and he had an ironing board. And at that time, they wore campaign hats, which were carryover, actually.
Right.
And he used to stand there and iron the brim, so that it was just, there wasn't a wrinkle in it. And when he wore it so that it shaded his eyes, and you couldn't see his eyes, but you knew he was looking at you.
Now, where did you go after Parris Island?
After Parris Island, I went to New River, North Carolina. That was a new installation. Also, the tents there, no barracks, and we formed the 3rd Marine Division. And I went to radio school there, and I completed the radio school, and they sent me to Quantico for a high-speed radio school, and I went to Quantico and completed that. From there, I went back to New River, and like I said, we formed the 3rd Division. We were actually a headquarters company, and I went from there to California, to Camp Pendleton, which also was tense. In other words, at the early stages of the war, there was no such thing as barracks. They were just camps that were thrown together to take care of the men that were coming in. And from there, I went we sailed for New Zealand. And we went, a ship called, it was one of the Moore McCormick freight lines. And it was so fast that we went over to New Zealand without an escort. And it took us 14 days to go from Long Beach, California to New Zealand. Oh yes, I forgot. I did a small stint in Camp Elliott before we went to Camp Pendleton, and we did a little training there, and then we went to Camp Pendleton. We shoved off overseas. We got to New Zealand, and we were based in a small town called Guadalcanal. It was about 60 miles from Auckland, in the mountains. It was an old sheep farm. And as I understood that we found out that the New Zealanders had an army camp there where we were. It was very nice. The people were exceptionally nice. The country was beautiful. It reminded us of home. It was very much like the United States. And from there, we shoved off and we went up to Guadalcanal. And the engagement, it was over in Guadalcanal. We just did some mopping up and cleaning up, so to speak, and made sure everything was secured, and we stayed there. I was recommended for a commission while I was there, and I never forget, I went in before the colonel, and the colonel says, you have 2 options. He says, you can get a commission here overseas, and we'll transfer you to another outfit, or we can give you 6 months back in the States. I looked at him, I said, you are kidding, aren't you? So naturally, I took the stateside duty and went to Quantico, and we went to what we call Reserve Officer School, and that was divided into 2 segments. The first part of the training to become an officer was bookwork, and of course most of us that went over, we were all, I was a corporal at the time, and we were out of school. We were thrown in with a bunch of what they call V5s or V12s. They were boys that were fresh out of college that were getting commissions. And they posted a list, and the 8 of us that went were on the bottom. Well, it didn't set very well, but there was nothing we could do about it. And I was called in, and they made me the spokesman. The commanding officer wanted to know why we were on the bottom of the list, being exposed to the war at that point. And I told him, I said, we've been out of school, we can't compete with these kids. I said, why don't we wait until after the second phase of the courses and then see where we are. Well, needless to say, at the end of the second half, when we actually became second lieutenants, the 8 of us were on the top. Because that was field work, things that you had to do, and actual situations, so to speak. And so we wound up on the top. So it was a different ballgame at that point. And then I went Gee, I had to stop and think where I went from Quantico to, oh yes, back to New River at that point. And they made me a train commander. We were going to the West Coast with replacements at that point. And I had the good fortune of leaving with 300 men in my command and arriving in California with 300 men. But I had a little talk with the boys on the train before we left, and I pointed out men that were stationed along the way, and I said, "You see those fellows there with the rifles?" And they all nodded their heads. And I said, "Those boys don't know how to shoot. They shoot pretty fast." I said, "So if I were you, I wouldn't try to take off." And I didn't lose a man. I was the only one that didn't lose a man. And of course, it went into my service record. And then from there, we went to Hawaii. And now we're talking late 44, because I was commissioned in June of 44. Mm-hmm. So we got to Hawaii, we went into training, and I was assigned to the 5th Division, the 26 Marines. And in the Marine Corps, you know, what you did originally, forget it. I was trained to be a communications officer, but I wound up with a machine gun platoon. Now I admit I didn't know a lot about machine guns, but I had a gunnery sergeant that was a regular Marine, and he was pretty sharp. He gave me a crash course, and I learned pretty fast. I had no choice. And we shoved off from Hawaii January the 1st, 1945. And we were part of an invasion force, not knowing where we were going at the time, but we found out later that we were going to Iwo, and everybody wanted to know where Iwo Jima was, so we heard of it. Of course, there had never been a white man on that island, only the Japanese. They owned it, controlled it, and lived there. And we were aboard ship over 40 days, and it was the largest convoy of the war. There were over 700 ships in the convoy. And we landed on Iwo February the 19th of 1945. And our division was part of the assault. And needless to say, it was a very, very tough operation and very costly in human lives. And you couldn't move. It was all volcanic ash. We had poured some 18,000 rounds of ammunition into the island from the battle wagons that were out there. And they sat there and laughed at us. They were talking, the intelligence was not good. And it later came out, and they admitted that it wasn't. And we lost a lot of men. I lost a good deal of my platoon early. I lasted 4.5 days. I got hit on February the 23rd, about 30 minutes after the flag went up on Surabachi. Part of my outfit went to Surabachi, and the rest of us went to the airfield. We had to secure the airfield. That's the way they broke us up. And I got hit with a mortar shell.
Now, did you see the flag go up on Surabachi, or?
Well, not actually see it, but it was up probably seconds that I did see it. I happened to turn to the left. I was lying there waiting to pull my platoon up into a flank, and I looked over and I saw the flag up. And well, it was just, it was a wonderful sight. And I saw the first flag, because there were 2 flags that went up, and I saw the first flag. And then they put up the second flag. They staged that one. That was the famous photograph. And about 30 minutes after that, I guess they got a little mad at us because we took the 8th mountain. I mean, we had everything thrown at us, and I got hit. And the corpsman came and picked me up.
No, how were you hit with what?
Oh, it was a mortar shell, not all across my back. And I had 8 pieces. They found out later that hit me. So they took me off the island, put me on a hospital.
Now, what kind of aid were you given as soon as you were wounded?
I gave myself a shot of morphine. The officers were allowed to carry it. We were the only ones that could take it with us. And I had morphine, so I just gave myself a shot to kind of ease the paint up a little bit. And the corpsmen saw me, and they came and they got me, and they took me out of the stretcher, and they took me down to the beach, and then I went to a hospital ship. And from the hospital ship, I went to Saipan, to another regular hospital, to a field hospital. And from Saipan, I went to Hawaii, to a field hospital. And from Hawaii, I went to San Francisco. And from San Francisco, I went to St. Albans on Long Island. They tried to get you as close to home as they could. So I was at St. Albans until June of 1945. Then they transferred me to the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And I was with the Marine Corps detail there at the yard. And they kind of made me the officer in charge of the Marine detachment there. And then I became the post exchange officer because I had had some mercantile experience, and the captain that was the post exchange officer he got out. So they asked me if I would take it, and I said yes. So I took that until about October, I think it was. And then I had more than enough points when the point system came out to resign my commission. And they asked me if I wanted to stay, and I said, no, I want to get out. So I got out, and I had about 45 days coming to me, so I decided I would take a ride out to Colorado. So I went out there and stayed there for a while, worked a couple of years, and then I came back east, and I was back home again. Older and wiser. It was a great experience. We had a lot of good times, we had a lot of bad times, naturally. I lost a lot of people that I knew, and especially my platoon. I later found out that we had almost 100% casualties in my platoon. It was just a devastating place to be. The island was a nothing, really. Mm-hmm. But we had to get the airfields. Mm-hmm. There was no question whether we had to or didn't. We had to, because by the time we completed the engagement, which I later found out, the first planes landed that were that were hit, mm-hmm. and they would have never made it back to Saipan. Never. Just you couldn't do it. We were 750 miles from Tokyo, and we had to take that spot. But it was costly, and they told us it would be costly, and it was. It was the most costly operation in the Marine Corps history. In fact, it was actually the most costly operation in World War II, comparatively speaking, about other engagements that were fought.
What was it like on the beachhead when you first?
It was all volcanic ash.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't dig. You dig a hole and cave right back
mm-hmm.
in again. Mm-hmm. There was no such thing as digging a foxhole because it wouldn't hold. Mm-hmm. And you just you lay there and hopefully you were all right. But see, they could see us, but we couldn't see them. They were so dug in these emplacements that they had all those years to get that island ready for them, and especially when the war broke, they knew that eventually we'd be going there. And they were waiting for us. There was over 15,000 of them. We landed probably in the entire engagement, we landed over 40,000 men. So you can imagine on an island half a mile wide and a couple of miles long with 60,000 men on there. It was just incredible. Mm-hmm. Absolutely incredible.
Now, what kind of weapons did you carry?
We had what they call a card. The officers were given carbines, mm-hmm. which were useless. There was not much firepower to it. And pistols. We had 45s. All of my boys had M1 Garands. but it was, the machine guns were the core of my outfit. I had 10 guns, and originally they were 5 water-cooled and 5 air-cooled, and we traded in the water-cooled for the air-cooled I had, because they were easier to carry and you could move with them. I had 10 air-cooled 30 caliber machine guns.
Now, did you ever make use of the GI Bill after you left service?
No, I never did. I went back to my family. We were in business up in Mechanicsville. We had Army and Navy stores, and I stayed with them a while. And this was after I came back to Colorado. And then I decided I wanted to do something, and an opportunity arose where I could go into the restaurant business. And I bought a restaurant halfway between Mechanicsville and Waterford on Route 4. And I was there 15 years. And from there I hung around for a little while, and then an opportunity arose where I would become the general manager of the Colony Country Club out in Voorheesville. I was the one that was on the Wolf Road on the corner. And I was there when we opened it up. And I did it as a favor to the president of the club at that point. And he says, why don't you try it for about a year? I says, I will. So the year stretched into 14. And I stayed there. And I got out, and I went back. I went into the catering business. And I was in that a little over 20 years, 22 years. And I kind of semi-retired, which was not for me. So I got a job with the court system here in Albany, and I'm still there.
Okay. Did you ever join any veterans organizations?
Oh, I belong to them all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I belong to them all. Marine Corps League, American Legion, Veterans. I belong to them all.
All right. Are you active in them? Or?
Not really. No. If I were active in any of it, it would be the Marine Corps League. I've gone to the Marine Ball down in Washington, D.C. a few years ago. My daughter and son-in-law gave that to me as a present. And we went down, and we stayed over the light there. And it was interesting. We went to the ball, and it was outside of Quantico. And I live right out here on Crumpkill Road. The girl that I'm with is a lifelong resident of the area. So I'm her significant other. We've been together 27 years. We belong in long engagements.
Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that was in service with you?
Well, I shouldn't say yes. There's a man in Albany, he's still around. He was on Iwo, Ted Yund. He's not well right at this point. And he went in after I did, a little after. And he went in, he was in the Marines, and we became friends. We still, I haven't seen him in some time, but he talks to his wife Margaret, and he's not that well. He's in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's.
How do you think your time in the service had an effect on your life?
It had a big effect on my life, really. When I went in, I was, I was 22 when I went in, and like 22-year-olds, nobody could tell me what to do, I was my own boss. And, but I started saying lessons, I've learned that when you join the Marine Corps, you're no longer the boss. And you better find out quickly, because if you didn't, they would let you know. And truthfully so, that's the way it was. But like I said before, we had good times and we had bad times. And but we had a lot of good times too. And you say to yourself, well, they compensate for some of the bad times. But it was a learning experience. And young kids come to me and say, where would you go if you wanted to join the service? I said, well, I'd go into the Marines. I said, you might not like it. It's not the, greatest outfit in the world as far as, you know, you can't get ahead quickly. You're in there a long time before they promote you. I was lucky. I became a corporal, and then from there I got commissioned. But I was probably one out of I don't know how many that happened to.
Mhm.
But be as it may, it's an outfit where you work hard to get what you get, and that's the way the Marine Corps is even today. You know, when they say a few good men, that's about what it is. That's the way they think of them.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview.